Number 19. The big question posing producer Verity Lambert and the production team of Doctor Who Season 1 in 1964 following the broadcast of The Reign of Terror was, can you do it again? Yes, we can, they replied. Season 2, William Hartnell's second season, airing from 1964 to 65, and the second most recent season to be released on Blu-ray. It's also the 60s season that's most complete. There's only 2 missing episodes. The Crusade Parts 2 and 4. Season 2. It basically took what Season 1 did so right, and basically did it again, but even better. It's so good. There's some really great stories in here. Oh, Planet of the Giants is an underrated gem. I thought that was great. Dalek Invasion of Earth, which recently came out as the number 1 voted story for the first Doctor's era in the Doctor Who magazine poll 2023. I was about to say 14 for some reason. For 2023, that came out as the highest first Doctor story. That is a brilliant one. The Rescue's a fun little one. I don't really like the romance, but a lot of people found that to be really fun and enjoyable. There is some funny moments in it, I will admit, but I don't really like the story, full stop. And speaking of stories people don't really like from this era, Web Planet is next, which is the big, ambitious story that they were going to make the Zarbi the next great thing, but it didn't quite end up working. The Crusade is really good, but sadly 2 episodes are missing. You can still see the surviving 2 on the Lost in Time DVD, alongside many other orphaned episodes, and also on the Blu-ray, which the reconstructions of episodes 2 and 4. The Space Museum again has a very good first episode, but goes downhill a little afterwards, and then we get the magnum opus of Season 2, The Chase. I don't care what anyone else says, I love this episode. I think it's the best one of the season. It is amazing, it's so fun, and Terry Nation again plays with the whole 6-part concept story, where it doesn't have to be all in the same place. You can go from one desert planet in 2 episodes to New York in the 3rd, and the Mary Celeste. And then in episode 4, they go to this haunted house, this closed haunted house, and then 5 and 6 they go to a jungle planet, and they meet the Mechanoids in the last episode. It's a really good story, really moving it around. It's not entirely perfect, like why the heck did they bring in a duplicate Doctor if they wanted to help Hartnell with his grueling schedule, and only to give him twice as much work to do? But it's still a really strong episode. Following this off, we have The Time Meddler, which is a very good series finale. And apart from his contributions to Dalek's Master Plan, this is easily Dennis Spooner's best script. He's also a very good script editor. Although David Whittaker's better, but I do think Dennis Spooner did a really good job as script editor this season. The character dynamics between the first Doctor, Ian, Barbara, and that first Susan and later Vicky is also really good. It's quite interesting that the TARDIS team is quite different from start to finish of each of the following seasons after Season 1. Season 2, it starts off with the same team from Season 1, but then changes quite a bit over the course of the season, so that instead of Susan, Ian and Barbary, we got Vicky and Stephen, which is how Season 3 starts. And then we go for another couple of companions before we end up with Dodo leaving, and then Ben and Polly coming on board, and that's how Season 4 gets started. And we go on from there. Season 4 ends with Jamie and new companion Victoria, who starts off Season 5, and then Season 5 ends and 6 starts with Zoe coming on board. So it's quite interesting that from Seasons 2 to 5, the TARDIS team is very different to how it starts and how it ends, apart from Jamie sticking around for all of the second Doctor's era apart from Power. It's pretty interesting, and whilst it doesn't always work, for this season the character dynamics work pretty well. Susan's exits is pretty good, although it would be nice to see her get to do more stuff. Maybe we will for the 60th. Then again, people keep speculating Susan's always going to return, and she hardly ever does, so if there was a time to do it, it would be the 60th. Ian and Barbara's character growth comes to a great conclusion with The Chase, and Vicky and Stephen also great new additions. Overall, Season 2 is a really good continuation of the show, and if Season 1 started the legacy, Season 2 would ensure it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Romans. The Red Planet in the Space Museum could be a bit better. But overall, this series is pretty great. But the first two and the last two stories are definitely the highlights. And this season, as a whole, would cement Doctor Who's legacy going forward. Number 18. And now we go back to the Jon Pertwee era for his second best season. And as I mentioned, all three of his middle ones are pretty damn consistent with each other. The Pertwee era as a whole is very consistent, but especially these middle three. So, the second to best Third Doctor season is, of course, Season 10. Airing from 1972 to 73, this is by far the best anniversary season, even if Season 11 technically broadcasts closer to the anniversary date. But I put that one above Season 20 and Series 7 anyway, so yeah, Pertwee still gets the better anniversary seasons so far. We'll see what David Tennant as the 14th Doctor and Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor get. But as of now, yeah, Pertwee still wins by a landslide. Well, unless I was taking the 25th anniversary into account, we haven't got to that one yet. Anyway, Season 10 is very good as well. Three Doctors is a brilliant way to start. It's not my favourite of the multi-Doctor adventures, but it is very good. This is very good. Apart from Dimensions in Time, all of the multi-Doctor stories are very good, in my opinion. Well, the TV ones at least. We also have Carnival of Monsters, which is a really fun and enjoyable story, and it's just so good. Why is that one not talked about as much? It's so underrated. At least the Drashig have become more popular, thanks to Five Who fans Drashig. Haha, awkward! I love Drashig. After that, Season 10 does dip a little bit. Frontier in Space is basically just the Doctor and Jo caught up in two species kind of having a bit of a Cold War with each other. It's an allegory of the Cold War. However, they just keep being taken from one prison cell to another or captured by one group or another for 4 episodes. 4 out of 6. 4 of them are just the Doctor and Jo caught up in a situation they're believed to be spies or traitors and taken from one prison cell to the other. Maybe get busted by one species, but they're still just interrogated either way, or maybe there's something else that happens, like the Doctor goes to the lunar penal colony and they try to escape only for them to almost be killed. Then it's just all over the place until the Master eventually shows up and takes them for himself, and finally at least puts a bit of a pause on the Doctor and Jo not being believed by everybody else. I mean, fine for like 2 or 3 episodes, but by the halfway point, really, I mean, I'm not expecting them to be friends with them straight away, but you know, by the halfway point in some of the other stories, there were people going like, maybe they're actually pretty okay people, maybe we should trust them, like the naval people in the Sea Devils, for example, written by the same guy. But this story, well, it's episode 5 where we kind of start to see some of that, and okay, fair enough, but it still doesn't really do much until we get to the last episode, and then finally maybe we get some of the personal reasons why some of these characters are doing this. And then we get to the climax and it's revealed that the Daleks are involved. After all, the Master's working on their behalf, yada yada yada. But the episode doesn't really have a proper end as we're tying in with the next story, Planet of the Daleks. Frontier in Space is just frustrating. It's decent, it's good in a twist extent, but it's frustrating. The best stuff is probably the stuff with the Dr. Jo and the Master, as well as also stuff happening in the last 2 episodes, as those are easily the best too. But it's such a frustrating watch for most of the time. Planet of the Daleks is a bit better, but it's mostly a greatest hits of Dalek stories written by Terry Nation. He'd been away from writing the Daleks for about 8 years since Daleks Master Plan, parts 1 to 5 and 7, which will end in 65, and he couldn't get his Dalek TV series off the air. So this is the first time he's come back to the series since then. And it's basically just a in colour, updated rewrite of the original Dalek stories with a few things changed up a little bit. We even have Jo almost leaving the TARDIS after falling in love, similar to Invasion Earth. And while she would do that in the next story anyway, it is very identical to, or almost identical to Invasion Earth, and even sowing the seeds for the Green Death. But yeah, Planet of the Daleks does kind of retread a lot of stuff that the previous Dalek stories, especially the first, did. I think it's better than Death to the Daleks though, so that's a plus. But overall, it's a good episode. It's fun. The Supreme Council Dalek in this one has a fantastic design though, and they even used a Dalek movie prop Terry Nation owned. That's so cool. It's such a cool design. And the inhabitants of Spirillon, the Spyridans, they're really cool. But overall, it's a good Dalek story, but it's not one of the Nation's best. I think that would go to his ones from the 60s and to his one from season 12. More on that later. Also, I do think Day of the Daleks is the stronger Pertwee Dalek story. However, the Dalek voices in this story in Death are far better than Day of the Daleks' one, and Frontier in Spaces. I don't know what happened, but Michael Wisher's Dalek voices in Frontier Part 6 were shit, and then suddenly, somehow, for Part 1 or Part 2 of Planet, they were awesome. So, also, Roy Skelton either came back to or started doing Dalek voices around this time, and he's brilliant too. Finally, we have The Green Death, which I think I gave it a bit too much of a low score in my review. I think I should bump it up to a 9 now. It is really good. It's a very good story. That is probably one of Doctor Who's most political stories. Ha! Told you Doctor Who was political before the new series. Especially before 2017. And it's a great departure story for Jo. The villain being a computer, the giant maggots being a more Earth threat. And it's just a really good story, and has a lot of, and even is one that could resonate today, with the whole oil and pollution-esque storyline, and the whole vegan and back to basic Earth-grown farm, etc. Bio group and so forth that Professor Cliff is part of. It's a very good story, and I think it's one of the ones that probably would work in any era. Maybe not the 60s, but any other era probably could have this as a story, and it would fit right in. It works really well for the 70s, but give it a little bit of jiggery-pokery in the script writing to make it more tie in with current affairs, and it could fit in any time, any decade. It is that good. It is such a good story. And yeah, it wraps up the Third Doctor Jo character developments and arcs really well. Their relationship, it's so good. Oh, I wish I'd given this a 9 out of 10 in my review, because it is such a good one. Maybe a little bit too long, but overall it's very good. For me, this and The Time Warrior are the last two great Jon Pertwee stories. Whilst I do like Planet of the Spiders, I do think this and Time Warrior are the two last great stories of the Jon Pertwee era. And we're going to be kind of in a okay to not very good territory until Tom Baker comes along. But what a way to wrap off this part of the era. What a way to wrap up Jo's character. And yeah, this was really good. The Third Doctor's era was about to take a change. And soon, an even bigger change would be on the horizon. Number 17. Now, that was quite a lot of classic Who we just talked about. That was like, what, 6 seasons? 5, 6? Yeah, about 6 seasons. Like I said, seasons 9 and series 6 could swap places on a later edition of the ranking. But as of right now, yeah, that's 6 seasons in a row, right after 3 new series in a row. I think it's time we had another new series, don't you think? Well, there is a couple, on this list, there's a couple of series and seasons that share numbers that are pretty much next to or close to each other. And this is going to be the case for one of them. We've just had season 10. I think it's only fair that we now have series 10. AKA Season 36, airing in 2016 for Return of Dr. Mysterio, and I'm also going to include Twice Upon a Time, even though it's not in this steelbook. Same for Revolution of the Daleks with Series 12. Series 10. By far the best 12th Doctor series. It's his third and final one, by the way, but by far the best series for Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. Like, this is light years ahead of Series 8 and 9 combined. This is so good. Okay, there's still some elements from those eras and some of the Matt Smith eras still present in here, but for the most part, it's done well. It's done really good. As opposed to some of those stories in Series 7, 8 and 9, which weren't so great. But Series 10, my god, the only one that's not so great is Live the Land. That one's a bit of a dud. Also, Twice Upon a Time sucks. Balls. I really hate that episode. But other than those two, this is a really good series. The Return of Doctor Mysterio is a massively underrated gem of a Christmas special. Easily the strongest one after the Christmas Invasion and Voyage of the Damned. Okay, those two are my favourites. So, okay, third best. And fourth or fifth best festive special, I guess. If I was including the New Year ones. Yeah, 4 or 5. Yeah, fourth. I would go with fourth. Okay. Because I do love Eve of the Daleks. But I might put it above Resolution. I'm not sure if I put it above Resolution, so fourth or fifth. But the pilot is a really good start to the series. It's a clever title to it, because at the time before it's being called The Pilot, because, oh, it's to do with the pilot episode of a show, even though this is season 36, series 10, etc., etc., and the show's going to get another revamp next series. So why are they calling that? Oh, actually, it's to do with the pilot of this ship, except the ship is a puzzle, etc. That's actually a good way of doing that title. Very clever. Well done, Stephen Moffat. Smile is really good. Frank Cottrell Boyce wrote the unpopular In the Forest of the Night for Series 8, but Smile is a strong improvement. This is a really good episode. The climax could have been written a bit better, but overall it is a very good episode, and quite creepy in places. Thin Ice is a great historical episode where the Doctor gets to punch a racist. To quote Skipper from Madagascar 3, well, that was worth the price of admission. Sarah Dollard, who wrote Face to Raven in Series 9, which was a good, for the most part, episode. But she's here to write an even better one, where the Doctor gets to punch a racist. Oh yes, do that again. Oh yeah. But the rest of the episode is also really good. Really enjoyed this one. It's also nice that we go to Georgian, specifically Regency, London, rather than Victorian London for a change. Always a nice treat. Knock Knock and Oxygen are fantastic, scary, creepy, and masterfully written by Mike Bartlett, newcomer to the series, and Jamie Matheson, 12th Doctor era writer MVP, respectively. Things kind of dip after that, though. Extremis is a decent episode and starts the Monk trilogy off in an interesting way. And The Pyramid at the End of the World is a pretty good one. That was one of my favourites when I first saw the series initially. But Live the Land kind of, again, brings it down with the final episode. It's not really that interesting. This was my least favourite episode when I first saw it, and not including Twice Upon a Time, still is. So, yeah, this episode is just kind of a bit disappointing. What's worse is it's written by Toby Whithouse, who, until this point, have been writing brilliant scripts for the series. School Reunion, Vampires of Venice, The God Complex. Did you write for Series 7? Yeah, I think he did. A Town Called Mercy, and especially Under the Lake and Before the Flood. He was a brilliant writer. But his final Doctor Who script at time of recording is this. Oh dear. Oh dear. I wouldn't be surprised if Stephen Moffat had some involvement with this, but he's not credited, so yeah. Unlike with Pyramid at the End of the World, where he is credited. Huh. Interesting. So he's okay to credit himself with Peter Harness, but not Toby Whithouse if he had something to do with that. It's like Chris Chibnall when he didn't credit himself with Haunting Villa Diodati with Maxine Alderton if he did have anything to do with that. He's okay crediting himself for Praxis and Can You Hear Me, but not for the one that actually ties in with the series finale. And I'm not talking like final scenes of an episode, like the end of Closing Time. I'm talking about the episode itself. Empress of Mars might be my favourite Ice Warrior episode, or second favourite after Seeds of Death. And it's a pretty good final Ice Warrior story for the time being, pretty interesting. And as Mark hits his last script, he goes out on a good note. Eaters of Light wasn't quite so fulfilling or exciting when it first came out, but after a rewatch I kinda liked it a bit more. It is the only script written by a classic series writer, Ronan Munro, who wrote the fantastic Survival, and it is definitely not as good as that, but it's still okay. It's still a pretty good story. I actually quite like it. My revisitation review was actually very positive on it. Even though, again, it's not really much of an episode, it's still pretty decent. But what seals the deal on Series 10 being not just Peter Capaldi's best series, not just being Stephen Moffat's second best series, and not just being one of the best of the new series, is the fantastic, amazing finale. The finale is almost perfect. World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls is awesome. This is such a good season finale. Individual episode wise, World Enough in Time definitely takes the gold medal of the season, with The Doctor Falls a close silver. Oxygen will come bronze. And if I was doing story wise, this two-parter takes gold whilst Oxygen is promoted to silver. I think I gave Knock Knock the bronze medal in my ranking. I could be wrong about that. I really loved that episode on a rewatch. But World Enough in Time, The Doctor Falls, this two-parter is such a great way for the 12th Doctor, Bill, Nardole, Missy, and the John Sim Master who returns for this story to go out on, as is for Stephen Moffat as showrunner. This is the perfect finale. It's just a shame that Twice Upon a Time exists as well. Enough said. But if we can ignore that, this is fantastic. This is the best way for them to go out. This is so good. Easily the second best season finale after Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways. More on Series 1 later down the line. But yeah, Series 10 is so good for the most parts. And also, but what really makes this one stand out against Series 8 and 9 is the Doctor and companion relationship. Bill and Nardole are just fantastic. I like Clara, but I don't think she's amazing, and she definitely has a lot of flaws. Series 8 is probably her best series for the most parts, character-wise, and the relationship with her and the Doctor, I can understand that, and I can see where they're going forward, what they're doing with Series 9, where she's getting more reckless and dangerous and trying to be like the Doctor, but yeah, I don't know if it's entirely working. Series 10 goes back to the Doctor being like a teacher and Bill being, like Ace, a student, and they're basically like a teacher-student relationship. And also you got Nardole, because Nardole's awesome. You didn't really think much of him in Husbands of the Song, or even in Return of Doctor Mysterio, though that latter one did show signs of what was to come. And then he was awesome. Oh goodness, this series is so good. The only downside is the first story arc with the whole vault thing isn't quite as good, because it's another mystery box. What's in the vault? And it turns out it's Missy. Another predictable one. However, Missy's character arc in the second half is probably what makes that second half of the series prior to the finale, and it's so good to see how it all comes together in the finale, as well as the return of John Sim's Saxon Master from Series 3 and the Series 4 specials. Whew! Goodness, what a series! This was really good. Because the Whittaker era was okay, this is the last great new series as of time of recording. But maybe Series 14 will be even better. Also, shout out to Jenny from the Whoniversal's Discord server, as this is her favourite series. And now we're down to the top 5 new series, which, yeah, basically the RTD era, the first one, and Series 5. Yeah, it's basically the first 5 series. But before we get to any of those, number 16. I think this is the only season on this ranking that shares the same number with its placement on the ranking. Season 16. Season 16, Tom Baker's fourth season. No, it's not, it's his fifth. Tom Baker's fifth season as the Fourth Doctor, and the Key to Time season, but unlike Trial of the Time Lord and Flux, this is more of a season arc rather than 26 episode story that just has 6 segments as part of the story. This is the blueprint of what the new series would do later down the line, if we were just going by Doctor Who standards. And whilst the series is starting to go into more comedic and comedy element stories, more so than horror, it's still holding up very well so far. The production is still holding up very well, and we're still in peak Tom Baker performance, even if we're not in peak Tom Baker story period. The introduction of Mary Tam Romana 1 gives us a new status quo on the companion, compared to Leela, who was more of a savage but still strong-willed character, and Sarah Jane, who was strong-willed but more humanised. This time around we have a very clever Time Lady. And while she's still a strong female character, which is great, we get to continue that, it's also a new interesting dynamic between her and the Fourth Doctor, because they're two of the same race. Also, K9 Mark II is here. Extra points. The Ribus operation starts off stuff very interestingly before we get to Douglas Adams' magnificent The Pirate Planet. But if that wasn't good enough, we then get the David Fisher double bill of The Stones of Blood and the magnificent The Androids of Tara. That episode's underrated, by the way, check it out. Things kind of come crashing down with The Power of Kroll. Robert Holmes' last script until his return in the mid-80s. And it's just bad. Not even just from a production level, it's just bad. I hope Season 16 chooses this story to have the updated visual effects, just for Kroll alone. But this story is just so bad anyway, so that's just a visual representation. This is such a bad story. Armageddon, in fact, is not that much popular, but I think it's a decent conclusion to the series, and I think I initially put this one fourth in my ranking and Ribos below it, but I might swap those two round if I watched them nowadays. But once again, we got an okay season conclusion. They get all of the keys in pretty interesting ways, but then the Doctor just gets rid of them again because the Black Guardian turns up to collect them, not the White Guardian. And then they just decide to put a randomizer in for next season, which they hardly ever use anyway, so... Yay! Another season arc that kind of fizzles out at the end. It had such a great momentum elsewhere, for the most part, and then it kind of fizzles out at the very end. What is it with season arcs just kind of falling flat at the end, apart from Series 10's Missy arc so far? That seems to be one of the... There's probably a few exceptions I've already talked about, but that's probably the most notable one, as I mentioned. So yeah, Season 16, airing from 1978 to 79, sorry for forgetting about that, is a very good season, and is definitely Tom Baker's middle season. Like, out of his 7, it's the one that comes midway on the ranking of those ones. Because it's not bottom 3, but it's also not top 3, so yeah. 4th best season, but also 4th worst, so yeah, it's very good. Which means all 3 of his best seasons are Philip Hinchcliffe era. Tom Baker, Philip Hinchcliffe season fans rejoice. More on those later. Number 15. With the exception of the 9th Doctor, these next 2 placements will finally have every single Doctor have at least one season on this list so far. The 9th Doctor is going to be the last of them to have his series on this list. So, out of the other 2, the next one is Patrick Troughton, as my number 15 choice is Season 6. Season 6, airing from 1968 to 69, and Patrick Troughton's 3rd season as the 2nd Doctor. It's great. This is really great. Okay, the Dominators is shit, and don't even get me started on the Space Pirates. But we've also got the Mind Robber, which is amazing. We've got the Invasion, which is amazing. We've got the Crotons, which is underrated. I mean, that was not amazing, but it's good. It's enjoyable. For Robert Holmes' first script, it's still very good. Yeah, he's got to get much better in the 3rd Doctor's era and the 4th Doctor's era. Well, most of it anyway. And of course, his greatest episode will come in the mid-80s. Case of Androzani. But this is still a good start for him. The Seeds of Death is a very good story. I'm debating whether this one or Empress of Mars is the best Ice Warrior story. I'm going to lean mainly towards this one, but they're both quite close to each other. It's a very good Ice Warrior story. And the War Games, it is an epic conclusion, not just to the season, but the second Doctor's era as a whole, as well as his, Jamie and Zoe's tenures, and the 1960s as a whole. Season 7 was not 100% a thing at the time, so this could easily have been the finale to the whole show. However, Season 7 did get made, and that proved to be very successful, and the rest is history. Again. But yes, if we didn't have Season 6, we wouldn't have the Jon Pertwee era, and The Invasion is basically a pseudo-pilot for that. They pretty much test the water of what the Jon Pertwee era was going to be, at least early on, with that story. Yeah, it's a bit long, 8 parts, really. Could have been 6, but it's still really good. Same for the War Games, 10 parts, really? Did you need to be that long? 6, maybe 7, could have been good enough, but it combined the 4 and a 6-part production blocks together, so hey, and as the possible last story, they could have gone all out. Although, what happened to Lady Jennifer? Was that her name? The nurse lady who was helping them in the first 5 episodes, she then disappears halfway through. That's odd. But anyway, the War Games is still an epic conclusion. It's not my favourite of Troughton's era, or even the season. That goes to Mind Robber for the latter. And I also think The Invasion's better. I think War Games will come third on the ranking. And I think I'd place it 10th in my second Doctor ranking, but it's still an epic conclusion. Fun fact, this is the favourite story of former Whoniversals member Jean-Luc Harry. Also, fellow current member Will Maddox's favourite Doctor is Patrick Troughton, and stands almost all of these stories. I think the only one he doesn't really stand is the Space Pirates. I stand that opinion. But I think he shares my favourite second Doctor story, which is coming up in Season 5, but more on that later. I was just going to give him a shout-out. I like giving my friends shout-outs. So, Season 6, a very good season. It's Patrick Troughton's weakest season overall, but coming 15 out of 39 overall, or heck, 3 out of 6 for the 60s, that's still pretty damn impressive. Or, as Will Maddox would say, based! Number 14. And he's going to hate me for choosing this series to go above a Patrick Troughton season, because we now go back to the new series. And you're probably thinking, oh, now you're going to choose Series 5 and have the top 4 being all Russell T Davies Era 1. Not quite. Because number 14 is Series 2. Season 28, airing in 2006, and 2005 to Christmas Invasion. Oh, by the way, Season 6 was 1968 to 69. David Tennant's first series as the 10th Doctor, and Russell T Davies' second in his first era as showrunner. Series 2 is really good. It's just not as good as Series 1, or 3, or 4, or 5. But it is still really, really good. This was the series that got me into the show. It didn't solidify my fandom of the show. I think that would be Series 3, as well as also watching repeats of Series 1 and the episodes of Series 2 I missed. But I got into the show with The Idiot's Lantern. Yeah, I know, not the greatest episode to get into the show with, but hey-oh, it's all up or down, depending on the opinion of the episodes from here. In fact, episodes that I would put higher and lower would follow. Series 2 is really good. We start off with the best Christmas special, the Christmas Invasion, but then sadly we have the weakest new series opener of the first 6 series with New Earth. Oh, don't worry, Series 7 and 9 have much worse series openers. I think I do prefer Deep Breath to this though, so yeah, I think this would be the 3rd weakest series opener. Tooth and Claw is next, and that really should have been the series opener. That one is a very good one. School Reunion is a great episode, and not only is it Toby Whithouse's great debut as a writer, but it brings back Sarah Jane Smith and K9, Mark 3, and introduces Mark 4. Also, Anthony Head is fantastic as the villain. This is such a great episode. However, my favourite episode is The Girl in the Fireplace. This is magnificent. It's the Doctor Who equivalent of the Time Traveller's wife, and it's just so perfect. Well, apart from the fact we now know what Noel Clarke did around this time, and Cynthia Miles, who plays a guest character in this story, is kind of backing him. Yikes. But the whole Doctor being an imaginary friend of someone is an idea that Moffat would return for the character of Amy Pond in Series 5. In fact, there's quite a few elements from this story and his Series 3 and 4 scripts that he will revisit later down the line for his own tenure as showrunner, especially when it came to the characters of the Ponds and River Song, and how he would develop the Weeping Angels. The Cybermen make their grand return to the new series in Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel, 2 very good episodes. Then we get The Idiot's Lantern, which is pretty good. For me, anyway, I thought it was a good one. Not amazing. It's not the greatest episode to be introduced to the show with. Well, I did kind of see Rose, the end of the world, and the Christmas invasion, but this is the one that I actually properly got into the show by watching. Not the greatest one, but still a pretty fun one. Impossible Planet and Satan Pit are magnificent. Love and Monsters is severely underrated. I can see why people don't like it, but it's also really good analogy of fans. The Doctor Who fans who love the show get together, do their thing, and then there's this one fan who comes in and ruins everything. I wonder if Russell T Davies is going to do a modern version of that for his next era, where it's commentating on the current state of the fan base. And maybe this time we're going to lean more into the negative side. Her, sadly, is the biggest dud of the series, but even I don't even think that one's too bad. I certainly think Matthew Graham's other scripts for the show is worse. But I can see why a lot of people don't like this one. It's another not really anything special script. Not really anything interesting one. And yeah, it's basically there just to fill an episode gap. It probably would have been better as a Sarah Jane Adventures episode if it was rewritten and structured for that show. But yeah. But I don't hate it. I think it's just meh. The finale is great though. Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, and that cliffhanger. That cliffhanger is so good. Oh yeah. Oh, this is a great finale. Although it is a bit one-sided, I do prefer the Daleks to the Cybermen, but it is one-sided against the Cybermen. It's a bit of game over for them, especially when the Genesis arc opens. But the reveal was so good. And the building to the Cybermen's return again, and then the Daleks basically hijacking their invasion. That was so good. Now, I kind of like Rose. I'm not like an uber lover of Rose as a character or companion, but I'm not an uber hater either. So I think she's good. She is quite bitchy in places. In Series 2, she's kind of got a worse personality than Series 1. Especially with the romance with the 10th Doctor, which is a good attempt at what they're doing. It's a good try, but I don't know. I think the character needed to be made a bit more likeable. I don't know if she's too relatable or too unrelatable by the way they wrote her, but yeah, I think they should have made her a little bit likeable if we were going to believe this a bit more. But the ending was still pretty good and wrapped up her character prior to returning in Series 4 very well, even if it's on a very sad note. Russell T Davies knows how to play with emotions really well. He's that great of a writer, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does that for the 60th and Series 14 and beyond. Also, the Torchwood arc, whilst not as prominent as Bad Wolf or Mr. Saxon, is still a very good arc in this series. Speaking of Mr. Saxon, we get a little bit of a glimpse of him in Love and Monsters. Well, the newspaper anyway, hinting at what the next series' arc is going to entail. So, that's Series 2. The weakest of RTD's first run of series, but still a very good series. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we enter the best of the best with the top 13 Doctor Who seasons ever. So tune in next time as the beginning of the end of the countdown as we enter the top 13. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.